A couple of days ago, the Vatican stated that they were going to be making a huge announcement regarding supernatural activities, and everybody held their breath thinking that they were going to announce something to do with aliens or to do with the supernatural paranormal, thinking that this was going to be the disclosure that everybody was looking for. Well, they didn't. Spoiler alert, it was really confusing. And I made a video about it, kind of covering what the changes were going to be, the supernatural changes. And basically, what they said was, they're changing the way that they are going to be announcing paranormal events, and they are basically going to be vetting it and overruling that of priests and bishops, who would have before been able to just vet paranormal occurrences and say, yes, this is paranormal. Well, nobody knew what the fuck that meant. And I didn't know what that meant. But there is a man who has been on the case to try and understand what the Vatican is actually talking about. And is there something written between the lines? And that man is none other than Mr. Ross Coulthart. Look at that beautiful face. He has basically done a very, very good breakdown on what the Vatican actually meant by their incredibly strange and cryptic announcement, and here he is with what he has learned.
Are you, as I am, totally confused by that Vatican press conference last week, which laid out apparently new rules for the Vatican in assessing the truthfulness of supernatural and paranormal events?
Why, yes, Mr. Coulthart. Yes, I am.
What does it all mean? Well, I've had the task of trying to figure that out for you because, frankly, I found the press conference last week totally confusing.
Absolutely. Made
Firstly,
no sense.
Let's get UFOs out of the way. I'm told there was no specific mention of UFOs in the new rules.
What a shock. No new rules and no specific mention of UFOs. But don't forget that only a couple of months ago they changed, well, the Vatican changed a Catholic theology to not just include humans as a creation of God, but all living beings, being, microorganisms and the like. But, we know they were talking about aliens.
The rules laid down by the Vatican's dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. But there was a question, and the question was asked, what does this all mean about UFOs? And I thought it was very telling that Cardinal Fernandez, when he responded, he appeared to have a prepared statement.
Here we go.
And he said, on UFOs, we are truly not specialists. We cannot intervene. It could happen that a certain phenomenon of this kind is linked to a Christian Catholic religious phenomenon, in which case we shall see, but otherwise not. This could also happen in other religions. It's not our task, and outside the faith, certainly even less so.
Now, that is very telling, that they've got a prepared statement for that. But it's also very telling that obviously, they acknowledge aliens to a degree. There was, if this question was asked and they'd laughed at the question, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, they clearly have no understanding of, and don't care for aliens. But in terms of UFOs, they had a prepared statement. They knew the question was coming. What more do they know? That's the question.
Clear as mud, huh? I've got no idea what that means. But I take that as a tacit admission that the Vatican is aware of UFOs, and it's consistent with the past statements that are being made, which suggest that the Vatican's not ruling out the possibility of extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence. But let's get back to the story at hand. I think what this new rule, or these new sets of rules, represent is an attempt by the Vatican in the digital age to rein in a lot of claims that are being made about supernatural and paranormal phenomena which haven't been properly verified by the Church. And I know a lot of you will scoff at the idea of verifying supernatural or paranormal phenomena, but there really is a unit in the Catholic Church that does these investigations. And Even though I'm still sceptical at the idea of being able to verify a supernatural or paranormal event, I've seen up close just how dedicated they are in doing these investigations. I covered the story of the beatification of Mother Mary MacKillop here in Sydney, Australia a few years back. And I was impressed by the way that the alleged miracles which were purported to have taken place that justified the beatification of Mother Mary, they really did have to be properly medically assessed and verified in a very careful scientific way before the Vatican would proceed with the beatification.
Now, I think that the Vatican does take verifying paranormal claims seriously. I know it's a movie, but if you ever watched The Pope's Exorcist, right? A brilliant movie with Russell Crowe, and he is the Pope's head exorcist basically, and essentially, you see the due diligence that has to go into it for them to be able to. They have to rule out every possibility before they will deem it paranormal, and then the church will intervene. They have to go through medical checks, psychiatric tests, and evaluations. It's pretty thorough, and a brilliant movie as well if you haven't seen it.
Now, there were a hell of a lot of politics involved, of course, because the government, of course, likes the idea of appeasing a lot of Catholics here in Australia to make sure that we beatify their most holy of women in this country. And indeed, it did go ahead. But I must say, I was very impressed with the level of care and attention to detail. So what this is, I think, and the best quote came from the Washington Post on this, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, who's the head of the Vatican's powerful dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. He said, "The Church rejects false mysticism." And the best analysis of the implications of that comment came from Massimo Fagioli, a Catholic theologian at Villanova University. He said, "I think they figured out how the internet revolution has reshaped Catholicism. It used to be that someone would say, 'I saw the Madonna,' and then the local newspaper would drop by, then the national one, then maybe an international one. Now, anyone who has a mobile phone and is savvy enough can cause a sensation." And that's the point. The Vatican talked on Friday about how bishops have too often bought into false claims. And I think, frankly, this is an attempt to rein back the embarrassment caused by those claims. I suspect it doesn't have anything at all to do, despite what's been speculated on social media, I don't think it's got anything at all to do overtly with the phenomenon of UFOs, UAPs, unexplained aerial phenomena. But what I will tell you is there is a name inside the Vatican for UFOs, UAPs. They call them RES, Res Inexplicata Voluntes, unexplained flying things. And there is, I know, a degree of interest inside the Vatican in the subject of UFOs, not just because of historical sightings of orbs and other things, and there is a link between those orbs and spheres and glowing entities that links into what are called Marian apparitions, which is what the Vatican's talking about in these rules. It's also the fact that, as my interviewee David Grush, the former senior intelligence officer, told me last year, there is a direct allegation made by David that the Vatican is fully aware of the phenomenon of unidentified anomalous phenomena, or of the reality of non-human intelligence, because they were allegedly involved in the retrieval of a non-human craft from Italy to the United States in or about 1944.
Now, this intrigues the shit out of me, right? Because it's what do they know? I mean, the Vatican vaults, people have been down there and said that there's very strange objects down there, skeletons of things that are humanoid but aren't definitely not human, and, other relics that are apparently not of this planet. So they must know something. They must know something, and they're just holding their cards close to their chest. And again, I take it back to a couple of months ago when they changed the theology around God's creation, all right? I'm not a religious man, but I can see I think I can see the route that they're kind of heading towards, which is very interesting.
But let's come back to the rules for a moment. Take you back to 1981, an event in Medjugorje in Bosnia where 5 children witnessed what essentially is described as a Marian apparition, an apparition of Mother Mary. The claim is made, the Vatican's still investigating the Medjugorje claims, but there's been a flow-on of other allegedly bogus claims, false claims, including one in a little village north of Rome, where apparently an elderly lady brought back something from Medjugorje. And in this little village 30 miles northwest of Rome, there were claims of apparitions of the Virgin Mary. A local bishop declared it non-supernatural, but crowds of worshippers arrived on the spot, insisting that they were channeling divine messages against, interestingly enough, same-sex marriage and abortion. And that claim came when a woman brought back a statue from Medjugorje in Bosnia, where the Virgin Mary, of course, is also said to have appeared. Crowds prayed before the statue, received messages against same-sex marriage and abortion. And essentially it took 8 years for the local bishop to debunk that story. And I suspect, even though that incident isn't mentioned in these new guidelines, I suspect it's incidents like that have got a lot more to do with why the Vatican has laid down these new rules. Essentially, it's an attempt by the Vatican to dictate who will make the judgment about what type of phenomena is supernatural. And the most important aspect of these new rules is that now only the Vatican decides, and it will only be very rarely if those events are declared to be supernatural. It's all about rooting out fraudsters and, in this digital age, stopping people from milking honourable, well-meaning believers who are vulnerable, of course, to exploitation.
Now, I find that interesting because obviously the whole idea is a good one, but if the Vatican have the overall say, then how does the chain of command work? Obviously, someone would have to be declared supernatural for then the Vatican to intervene. But if that claim can't be made from anyone but the Vatican, how does it work its way to the Vatican? If that makes sense, like, does that have to cause enough of a stir online for the Vatican to like take notice and be like, I'm gonna go and investigate, or do you have to like phone up and be like, hello, I think my dog's haunted? I don't know. But it's interesting. I would like to know how this works, because at the minute it just seems like impossible for anything to be deemed supernatural.
And at the heart of it, of course, it's all about rejecting false mysticism. Now, it's interesting because Medjugorje itself, the event in Bosnia, is itself controversial. Pope Francis actually said in 2017 that the woman that they are purportedly seeing is not the Virgin Mary. And he's expressed great scepticism about the Medjugorje apparitions, which are said to be Marian apparitions. Quote, he said, "These supposed apparitions don't have much value. I'm giving my personal opinion," the pontiff said. "But it's obvious. Who thinks the Virgin would say, 'Come to this place tomorrow at this time and I'll give a message to a seer'?" Now, that was in relation to the ongoing apparitions that people say they're seeing at Medjugorje. But on the original apparitions to the 5 kids, the Pope's His Holiness is having it both ways. He's basically saying, on the original apparitions, the ones the children had, the inquiry says more or less that investigations need to continue. So he's very, very careful about discounting the Medjugorje apparitions. Now, it's very, very important because, frankly, you don't want bogus claims, and I know a lot of people out there will say that all of these claims are bogus, but I'm fascinated in the fact that throughout history there have been, and we explored this recently on Reality Check. You can go back and have a look at my conversation with theologian Paul Thigpen and Congressman Tim Burchett, where we talked about the possibility that what have been perceived through religious faiths as religious apparitions of, say, the Mother Mary at Medjugorje, are they perhaps UFOs, UAPs, some kind of non-human intelligence manifesting itself to human beings and being interpreted in a religious way. So the new guidelines say that as a rule, bishops should issue a nihil obstat, that's Latin, or no obstacle in many cases where essentially you really don't know. This means that the incident wouldn't be formally recognised as supernatural, but there'd be no barrier to worship. And that's kind of what they've done with Medjugorje. When they're going to recognise something as supernatural, it's a very rare event indeed. But of course they do this a lot when they beatify or make somebody a saint. The document goes on to say that 5 other decisions can also be issued by bishops in making these determinations, including rejecting outright that something's supernatural altogether, or banning the worship of such phenomena, but I'm sure they'd be very careful about doing that.
Yeah.
Under the new rules, though, Vatican approval should always be sought by bishops before any conclusions are published.
Oh, okay, so bishops would still have to go and investigate, but then they'd have to take their findings to the Vatican for it to get the green stamp of approval and say, yes, we think that this could be something supernatural. But I think bishops are far quicker to jump to the supernatural conclusion than the Vatican are, which means that, I mean, yeah, we'll obviously filter out all of the crap, but it'll be interesting to see a comparison between, like, how many in 2023, for example, how many approved supernatural cases there were compared to 2024, 2025, for example. I think that would be interesting to see, because then we could really see how cynical the Vatican truly are towards these cases.
With the Pope able to intervene in exceptional cases. Now, it's a very interesting area, this, because a lot of people were hoping that this whole announcement might have something to do with UFOs, and apart from that strange Q&A that took place during the press conference, there was really nothing in the rules at all specifically about UFOs. But if you look at the research that's being done into so-called Marian apparitions, which is at the heart of a lot of these claims of supernatural phenomena that the Vatican often investigates, they bear a very close resemblance to what a lot of people call UFOs, UAPs, and perhaps NHI.
Ooh.
So the big question is, what does the Pope really think about the possibility of non-human intelligence? And he actually did touch on this at the end of 2023, where he was questioned and he appeared to suggest that aliens could be baptized, if they exist, of course. He said he was touching on aliens when he was talking about how early Christians discussed associating with Jews and Gentiles. And then for some reason he compared that to aliens, and he went on to say that was unthinkable if, for example, tomorrow an expedition of Martians came, and some of them came to us here. Martians, right? Green with that long nose and big ears, just like children paint them. And one says, but I want to be baptized. What would happen? So he's posing the question, would we baptize an alien? And he didn't really answer the question, but he said, it was never the ministry of the closed door. Never. So he's not ruling it out. But it's interesting. What I think is important here is that the Vatican is continuing to become more conspicuous on discussing the possibility of ET.
They know something. They're like, come on. They know something. The Vatican, by far the most powerful people on the planet, most influential people on the planet. There is no way that they don't know, right? Like, whenever I think of UFO disclosure, I think it's going to come from someone like the CIA, MI5, the Pentagon, well, probably not even those people because they try and keep it shut, but, you know, whistleblowers coming forward from those places. I think we're looking in the wrong places for the information. We need to be pointing our fingers at the Vatican being like, what do you know? Because these people know stuff. The Pope knows stuff. I actually think the Pope probably knows more than the US president about NHI and aliens. I'm intrigued, and I definitely think that we're looking in the wrong places for the answers. But what do you think? And what's your take on the Vatican's sudden change in supernatural occurrences? And do you think that there is a correlation between that and the sightings that have been deemed within the Vatican and UFOs and NHI? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. While you're down there, be sure to jump to get the hell out of that like button if you have not already. Subscribe if you know. Tickle my little bell so you get notified whenever we upload. And until next time, guys, I hope that you have enjoyed. Cannot wait to see you in the next one. And I'll speak to you later. Peace.